And now I'd like to welcome to the program Andreas Umland. He is from the Stockholm Center for Eastern European Studies. Hello, sir. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me again.
Dr. Umland, we can see now these shocking images from the bombing of the Kharkiv builders merchants. Now here in Poland, we've seen so many sad and heartbreaking images. However, this recent attack with the death toll rising almost by the hour, we have now confirmed 44 deaths. Do you think that this latest atrocity will somewhat change the perception of the people in Sweden and in the rest of Western Europe?
Well, I would hope so. And of course, these are not the first such images. We had many, unfortunately, such images over the last more than 2 years now. And here the problem is that Kharkiv is very close to the Russian-Ukrainian border, and that Kharkiv is largely been shot at from Russia, and that Ukraine is currently not allowed to use its Western weaponry to shoot back and to suppress this artillery fire or rocket fire from Russia. And in a way, now Kharkiv is unprotectable because of that, because the Russian leadership has decided to bomb Kharkiv into ruins.
Right. Here on this market, I think it's been reported that they use glide bombs. There's also been discussion about placing 2 Patriot batteries in Kharkiv. I would imagine if that decision is made, then the decision likely comes with the assumption that those batteries can target Russian aircraft over Russian territory.
Again, I would hope so that this will be decided. At least these anti-aircraft or anti-rocket weaponry should be used over Russian territory, because it's not designed to hit actually targets on the land. That would be already a good step forward. And one is also asking oneself, what have these weapons that are now in Western Europe and in other parts of NATO and the European Union been originally built for? Most of the weaponry that the European armies have been has been built to defend Europe against Russia, and there's now a war that is being conducted against Russia, and these weapons are standing, as I see it, idle in Western countries and are not being used, and may one day be put in disservice, and they will never be used actually for what they've been built for. And now there's a chance actually to use them according to what was the initial plan for developing and building them.
So with these weapons standing idle, now we are following very closely President Vladimir Zelensky's tour of Europe, whether yesterday he was in Spain being offered some money. Today he is in, we believe, in Belgium. Again, there is money being put on a table. So you said that there is existing weaponry standing idle, this extra money being offered. What do you think would be the best use of it?
Well, as for instance, Denmark has given over to Ukraine most or even all of its artillery, because, you know, what would Denmark use its artillery against otherwise? That is also one of the reasons that countries like Estonia and Latvia, Lithuania, they have given a large amount of their weaponry and large chunks of their GDP to Ukraine, because they understand that the fight in Ukraine is a defense of these countries. And I would hope that this sort of strategic thinking would also take hold in other Western countries, and that they would also rethink their own foreign policies and security policies, and and use what they have basically for the purpose for which these weapons were once built and what they are designed to do.
Right. I think in order for us to transfer more weapons or to make some of these decisions that Ukraine can fight, can use these weapons on Russian territory, especially when it's close to their borders, it's largely a political decision. Are we approaching new breakthroughs in European political thinking? I know we have some reluctance on the behalf of Germany, a little bit on the behalf of France. Concerning the use of such weapons like that. Are we any closer to, with incidents like what's going on in Kharkiv, to getting these leaders to finally make the decision?
I think it depends on the country you look at. The perception of this war is, of course, very different in different countries. Even the reporting is different, and so. In spite of being basically most of the countries, perhaps with the exception of Hungary, being on the same page, there are still different interpretations what is actually the challenge of this war, and there are political issues like the unfreezing of the and legal issues, the unfreezing of the frozen Russian assets, the confiscation of these assets, and transfer to Ukraine. There are these strategic issues that Western countries keep their own weapons for a hypothetical war against Russia, in spite of there being already a real war that is fought in Ukraine against Russia. And there are also these financial issues and larger geopolitical issues where the countries are still sort of struggling to understand the significance of this war far beyond, in fact, Eastern Europe, far beyond, I would even say, Europe, and see it as a defense not only of Europe, but of the international security order, of the legal system of the world, the UN system, the inviolability of borders, of political sovereignty, and so on. And what is currently happening in Kharkiv is, of course, yet another scandal in that it is an attack by a UN Security Council permanent member, an official nuclear weapon state under the Non-Proliferation Treaty, on another UN member state, on official non-nuclear weapon state, which puts the whole international order on its head, because the international order as it currently is functioning, it's actually supporting Russia's war against Ukraine, because it gives Russia instruments to sort of support its war. And that cannot, if that continues, then the whole international order will be under question.
So you touched upon how differently the war is perceived in different parts of Europe. From Polish perspective, it's certainly seen by many as the actual clash of the civilizations. From your standpoint, from Stockholm, what is the perception of this conflict? Is it seen more as a localized conflict, or is the broader narrative apparent?
Well, I can't speak here for Sweden. I'm not Swedish myself, although I work at the Stockholm Center for Eastern European Studies. But Sweden is one of those countries, along with Denmark, with Finland, with Great Britain, where the majority of the population and of the political class is actually perceiving this war as clearly going beyond Eastern Europe and having a larger importance for the European security order and even for the international and even the global security order. And that therefore the Western policies in support of Ukraine are not just sort of made out of empathy and solidarity and things like that, or emotionally driven, but that they have a very rational and a very sort of self-interested motivation, in that we are supporting our own security by supporting Ukraine, because we keep the current UN border intact, the UN order intact, and that Ukraine's borders are, of course, just the borders of an ordinary UN member state. And if these borders are insecure and the sovereignty and integrity of Ukraine is insecure, then basically the borders and integrity and sovereignty of every UN member are insecure. And that creates, of course, a very dangerous precedent and dangerous perspective for the future.
Indeed, it does. I was going to throw out one more question before we let you go, sir. You mentioned the rules-based order is enabling Russia to continue its violent assault on Ukraine. Are there any ideas of how the United Nations, let's say, how the Security Council should be reformed in light of Russia's aggression against Ukraine?
Well, this war has shown that there's something wrong with this, with the Security Council, with the veto that Russia has, also China. And let me remind you that both the People's Republic of China and the Russian Federation were not founding members of the United Nations. The original seats of these two countries were occupied by, in the case of China, what is today Taiwan, until the early 70s, and the seat of the Russian Federation was occupied by the Soviet Union. And in fact, Ukraine, the Ukrainian Soviet Republic, was a founding member, unlike the Russian Federation, of the United Nations in 1945. And so these two new members, if you like, of the Security Council are simply, especially Russia, I would say, because so far China is not as aggressive in military terms, at least, as Russia. It's putting the whole sense of the creation of the United Nations and of the Security Council on its head, because now the Security Council is becoming an instrument for Russia to expand its territory, although you would think that Russia has actually enough territory and doesn't need additional oblasts and additional regions. And yeah, I mean, what is to be concluded from that this cannot go on, that this Security Council cannot function in this way anymore, because then the whole UN will suffer from this, and we may end up in a very different world where politicians and diplomats and entire countries will not rely anymore on the rule of law, on international organizations, and on worldwide solidarity, but where everybody will take of her or himself interests, take care of one's own interests, and perhaps acquire weapons of mass destruction to protect one's own borders and integrity and sovereignty.
Thank you so much, Andreas Umland, for that insight.